Welcome to another episode of Find Your Free, the podcast. I am your hostess, Rachel Voss, and here to take you through another listening journey. So here we are, episode 7, and let's just jump right in. So I gotta admit, I was a little stumped with coming up with what I wanted to talk about this week. So if you listen to the last couple of episodes, I talk about how I may have like an idea or like a thought or even a title, of an episode, and then I'll get on the mic and sort of let the content fill in from there. But this week, just as the week progressed and I'm getting closer and closer to the days when I record, I usually record between Friday and Sunday. I'm just like, I am like stumped and I can't be stumped. This is only episode 7, right? So I was initially going to record on Friday. Today is Sunday as I'm recording this. And so I was initially going to record on Friday, but again, just drawing that blank. So I turned to David, who you all know as my love by this point, if you've been listening to all the episodes. And I'm like, all right, I'm just going to wait till Sunday because I don't have an idea now, but I am fully confident I'm going to come up with an idea by then. And David's like, I'm fully confident as well. Recording on this particular Saturday wasn't an option because it was David's birthday. So we celebrated with a surprise Zoom birthday party that I threw for him. We just had a really good day celebrating life. So again, happy birthday to you, babe. Happy belated birthday at this point. But yeah, so I said, okay, I will have my idea by Sunday. So I told him that like somewhere along the lines of like Friday afternoon. And then Friday night, I got on a call with my stepbrother, Adam, and his wife, Jillian. And by the time we ended that call, I had my idea. So this episode is dedicated to Adam and Jillian for inspiring what this episode is called, Stay Anchored, My Friends. So I've talked a little bit about Adam in some of the episodes. I've definitely referred to him in telling the story of my life and how he came into my life by way of being my stepbrother. Came into my life when I was 7 and he was 2. It was like, is Adam 2 years younger than me or 5 years? He's 5 years younger than me, 6 years younger than me. So anyway, I want to say, because I catch myself when I say this in life, Adam came into my life by way of being my stepbrother, but he is my brother. So when I refer to Adam in future episodes, sometimes I may say my brother, sometimes I may say my stepbrother. Stepbrother's just kind of because I'd been saying that since a kid. But he's my brother. He's my brother, and my baby brother. And I love him. I'm so proud of him. And he brought Jillian into our lives. Let me see. Gosh, I should know this. 2011, 12-ish. 13-ish. Trying to think of when I first met Jill. So Adam moved from the New York area to Portland a long time ago. And that was where he met Jill, Portland, Oregon. And that was where he met Jill. So he had Jill in his life for a while before they were able to make the East Coast trip that allowed me to meet Jill. I might have even missed meeting her on 1 or 2 occasions when they visited, when they did an East Coast visit before. But I finally met Jill, I want to say it was like 2013 or 14. And the moment I met her, it was just an instant connection, an instant feeling of finding like a soulmate, a soul sister. We just connected and chatted the whole time. We were we were doing like a family weekend in Connecticut with like my stepmom's family. And so we were like spending the weekend together in Connecticut, and we were just 2 peas in a pod like that whole time together. And I was just like, oh my God, I love her. So turns out Jillian is a Taurus. And as I say ad nauseum in every episode, I am a Scorpio. And as I learned from my one-on-one astrology studies that I completed last year, I learned about shadow signs. And so Taurus and Scorpio are shadow signs because they are the 6 months apart. And so when I got this understanding about, oh, the shadow sign stuff, like it made me realize like how I do generally click with Tauruses. So my yoga teacher's a Taurus, Jill's a Taurus, my oldest brother's a Taurus. I usually have like a good interaction with them. For lack of a better word, I tend to be like attracted to Taurian energy, male, female. And so learning that it's because it's a shadow sign thing, it's like, oh, it's like, finding another part of yourself. And that's how it felt when I met Jillian. It was just like, I found like a piece of my soul in her. And so those two crazy kids, they got engaged. And in 2015, just after I had left the corporate world and stepped into Rachel Voss Yoga full time, those two crazy kids FaceTimed me one day and said, hey, we're getting married in September, and we were trying to decide like how we wanted the wedding to be officiated, who we wanted to officiate the wedding. And we thought Rachel is the best person to like officiate our wedding. How awesome would that be? And I'm like, oh my God, you want me to officiate your wedding? I was so honored. So I got my officiant information material through the mail through the Universal Life Church. And in September 2015, I flew out to Portland for the first time. They got married on the Oregon coast. So not exactly, if you are a fan of the Goonies or you know the movie The Goonies, not exactly where the Goonies was taped, but it was that same landscape, just beautiful, beautiful landscape. The Oregon coast is some of the most beautiful country like I've ever seen. And so, in September 2015, they got married and I officiated that wedding. I was officially the minister, quote unquote, the whole weekend. And I always tell Jill to this day, one of the top 5 weddings I have ever been to. I had so much fun at that wedding. And so, so that's Adam and Jill. And I adore them. I love them. They are a beautiful team. They gave me my beautiful nephew, Kieran K. Lou, in November 1st, I think November of 2019. Yes, the way that time is going. So they gave me a little fellow Scorpio. And I just love them. I love them. I love how they live their lives and all of that. Just true warriors, if you would, for the environment and for justice and all of the things that, I stand for and that pretty much my whole family stands for. So anyway, I'm talking to Adam and Jill on Friday. We're having like our catch up. We try to catch up at least like once a month, every couple of weeks. And so as we're winding up the call, Jillian's like, oh man, yeah, Rachel, like I love listening to your podcast. And I'm like, oh, I really appreciate that. I got to come up with an idea to record. And so I'm like, if you can think of anything. And then not even like a few seconds later, Jill's like, you know what just came to mind? Like people need to be rooted. Like people need to feel grounded. There's so much going on. We spent our whole, pretty much most of our conversation talking about the events that had happened, the attack on the Capitol. So we spent a lot of time talking about that. And Jill was just like, with the inauguration coming and just still coming out of 2020, she's like, I just feel like people need to be reminded to stay grounded and to stay rooted. And as soon as she said that, the words, stay anchored, my friends, came into mind. And I was just like, boom, Jill, I got it. As long as I got a title, if I at least have a title, I have somewhere to go. And so that came to spirit and I was just like, got it. So I will say the one thought I had about approaching this episode was that I wanted it to actually be an all meditation episode. I wanted it to be like a 20-minute, not so much a guided meditation, an actual silent meditation, but with some music in the background. But with podcasts and all the stuff, there's licensing and all of that. And so I wanted to have some music some very like gentle music to be going along so that there was something you could anchor your mind to in the meditation. So in other words, you don't open up the podcast and there's like 20 minutes of dead space. And Adam, multi-talented guy that he is, has been working on creating some music for me that I can use. And we just didn't get aligned in time for me to record and to figure out like how to get that music, loop that music, for that 20-minute time frame or whatever. So when Jill said that, I was like, this is perfect because I still want to set up to do an all meditation episode, but this is like totally in the ballpark of at least what I was thinking, right? Because the idea or the goal of an all meditation episode would be to help ground you. So why not have an episode where I can just offer you some tips and some reminders about staying grounded? So stay anchored, my friends. And again, shout out to you, Adam and Jill and Kay Lou. I love you so much. And thank you again for the inspiration for this episode. So yeah, I won't get too much into 2020. I spent 2 episodes talking about 2020. One was a reflection episode, and then one was more of like, okay, how do we move forward from here in 2021 and beyond? But what I will reference as far as 2020 is the trauma that came out of that year on so many different levels. So we had the social justice trauma, and we had the trauma of the pandemic and sort of the unknown, and like, when is this thing going to end? How is this thing going to end? Who is it going to affect? Will it affect me? What about my job? Like, all of those different things have all their own trauma, right? Some people lost family members, some people lost jobs, some people lost businesses, like, so there's all the trauma that comes from those different experiences. But collectively, even if we weren't heavily impacted, collectively, we all suffered from the trauma of just like the world shutting down and kind of being in this place that we never were in before. And then it was just a matter of like how we were able to navigate life from there. Kids suffer trauma. Like, I feel bad for my son, for all kids, because, as an adult, we can rationalize things in our minds. We can understand, even if it is traumatic for us, but we can kind of try and put stuff together. But for kids, it's just kind of like, especially like the littles, like my son is 13. So even he can wrap his mind around things and have some understanding and have discussion in classes about the impact of the pandemic. But like the littles, I always call toddlers and stuff the littles, like the littles who, adored going to their little kindergarten class or first grade. Like, how do they put that together in their mind? Not being able to see their friends, being on a computer screen all day, being overwhelmed with how do I turn on my camera or unmute myself or all that stuff. So, not being able to see their friends, not being able to celebrate birthdays, just not being able to have life as they knew it. And so all of us suffered or were at least affected or somewhat impacted by some aspect of the trauma that was 2020. And then again, we had the social justice stuff. We had a stream of like, just deaths that happened. So just a lot of stuff that by December 31st, 2020, probably left a lot of people feeling like upside down and what the fuck, right? And trying to find a sense of grounding. So then we, get to January 1st, 2021, and everybody's like, all right, new energy, this is going to be a different year. We've got 2020 in the rear. And then 6 days into the new year is that attack on the Capitol, like the just the insanity that we witnessed. And so that either created new trauma, just more, shock and like, what is going on? And all of those things, just taken in those things, moving through those things, living through those things can definitely make you feel like I am anything but rooted. It makes you feel like you're always on the precipice of like, what's going to happen next? Like you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And when you're in that place, it can definitely cause like anxiety. It can cause stress. It can cause just a feeling of being overwhelmed. And again, it can cause you to feel anything but anchored and rooted. So how do we find the ability to do that when it literally feels like the sky is falling or like the world is falling apart, right? And how we manage or how we practice staying rooted during these times will trickle down into our everyday lives. So whenever life gets back to normal or as we know it, I will say I wasn't the biggest proponent of saying, especially as we were moving through 2020, like, oh, this is the new normal. We've got to embrace the new normal. Like, yes, in theory, I understand like it was a new normal, and as much as we could, we needed to try and embrace that because resisting it or fighting it was only going to make it more challenging. But the hesitation with the new normal was more the normal because I'm like, this is anything but normal. You know what I mean? Again, like having little ones, on the screen with their friends instead of playing in person and riding bikes and having parties and going to the park and being close. Or, when you do see little kids outside and they're all masked up, like to me, that's anything but normal. So saying this was the new normal was almost like embracing that. And even though I wanted to embrace it again from the aspect of like, okay, I'm, falling in line, so to speak, so that I don't create sort of this unnecessary tension from resisting what's happening. I also don't want to embrace all of this as normal, because normal for me, and I think for many of us, is like, again, our kids being able to go out, being able to have brunches and lunches and just being with our family, you know what I mean? Like being able to hug our moms, our dads, our loved ones, like, being able to travel, like just moving around the way that we know it. Certainly, with the things that came out in 2020, certainly there is moving now with a new awareness and more awareness, right? But yeah, when we get back to that place of like what is quote unquote normal for us, the tools that we learn to apply in this space will trickle down to your everyday lives. And really, for those who have a yoga practice, a meditation practice, a mindfulness practice, just any of those mind-body practices, qigong, tai chi, things like that, anything that has that mind-body awareness, and especially my yoga students. So if any of my yoga students are listening to this right now, it's actually been before 2020 having those practices to help us manage the everyday lives, so that when something like 2020 happened, we already had the tools that we need. Like yoga has been in my life since I was 7, by way of my stepmom, Adam's mom, Terry. I talk about that a lot. It was in my life as a more formal practice for over 10 years now. I've been teaching, almost 10 years. So all this time that I've been in this yoga space, it's been about like the practice of being present and, only controlling what you can control, and which is just being present in the moment that we have, right? But as 2020 became 2020, it was like, oh shit, like this is why we have to practice. Like, yes, to manage our everyday lives, but when like the extreme happens, where do we go? How do we anchor ourselves? So for those of us who have had those mind-body practices, it was putting those practices to the test and to work, you know what I mean, in 2020. However, there are some people who didn't get introduced to these mind-body practices until 2020, or who really invested in these mind-body practices. Certainly, I think to some degree, most people have heard of yoga and meditation or mindfulness, certainly, as they are things that have become way more trendy these days. But really investing in a mind-body practice, really having an awareness and an understanding of the benefits of mind-body practices, I believe a lot of folks were introduced to that for the first time because of what came out in 2020. And so it's finding tools to help you survive in that space. So for those who are just getting introduced to these mindfulness practices, again, these mind-body practices, if you were introduced to them in the space that was 2020, I promise you, the more you practice them, the more you will see them applying your everyday lives, right? So what's our everyday lives? Say like traffic is something that just drives you up a wall. Say it's lines in the grocery store. Say it's your coworker. Say it's how somebody's breathing, like whatever the little things that like get under your skin and drive you crazy and take you out of your just take you out of alignment, that challenge your emotional regulation, right? Those are the everyday things. Like, how do I not lose my shit when my kid is getting on my nerves? How do I stay present when my partner and I are at odds? Like, how do I stay in that place of emotional regulation? And these are where those tools come into place. These are the tools that help you to manage your emotions, as well as to stay anchored and to stay grounded when, as I tell my yoga students, when life comes out of left field, when challenges come out of nowhere, when something suddenly just comes down on you, or even if it's not something sudden, if you are just managing something that's heavy. Like my stepmom, my dad had a stroke last year. I talked about that in my reflection on 2020. And now that has shifted the life that my stepmom and my dad had as they knew it, the ease of their lives, right? And so now her life has shifted to be like his everyday caretaker, and what comes along with recovering with the impact or recovering from the impact of a stroke. So fortunately, my stepmom has a practice of 30, 40 plus years, probably more than that. I thought I heard her say 50 years at one point. So she's had this practice all her life. But when this, I mean, I don't know if this is the biggest challenge in her life as far as I've known her, outside of losing her parents and things like that. I imagine caring for my dad in the space is the biggest challenge that she's had to experience. And so she said, like, all of my practice is what's helping me get through this. And so I'm saying that to say, if you're in a similar situation of being a caretaker, or say dealing with a family member who's in hospice, it's not just about the challenges that come out of left field, but the challenges, those heavy life challenges, like how do you stay anchored in those things that we're managing? So mind body practices can help us when things just sort of come out of nowhere, and when we're in something that's like every day, that's every day. Like, how do I manage this every day? And again, when we're not rooted, we're not anchored, we don't have our feet firmly on the ground, so to speak, that is what can cause anxiety. That's what can cause stress. That's what can cause us to project, to worry about things in the past, to worry about what the future is going to look like. That's what can cause insomnia. That's what can cause tension headaches, tight shoulders, TMJ, like tightness in your jawline. Like, all of these things not being rooted can show itself in so many different ways. And as I always like to share, with my community, with my students, with anybody who will listen, if you have a headache that you've been managing for a while, if you have like this tension that just won't go away, and you've gone to the doctor and you've taken all the things and it's still there, that's when you maybe want to start scratching beneath the surface and kind of figure out, well, energetically, like, what is going on in my life? So if you're somebody who slept well and then suddenly you're kind of like dealing with insomnia, or again, you are somebody who ate well and your appetite is shot, or it's the opposite, you are somebody that had maybe like a balanced diet, but now you're kind of comfort eating. Like, if you're just noticing these different things in your life that are maybe causing you angst or ailments or things like that, it can be super easy to just like, oh, it's just my job. Oh, it's just this. Oh, it's just that. But it's like, no, how are you really managing that? Like, if you watched the events that took place on January 6th, or you watched videos of it afterwards, like if you didn't watch the attack on the Capitol live, but maybe you saw like videos or footage or the news or whatever after, like, how did that impact you? How, I had yoga students that said, I watched that, and then suddenly for the rest of the week, I found myself taking naps. I was just so tired because it was a lot. And I got into this in the last episode. I won't get into it so much here, but speaking from my position as a Black woman and seeing all of the injustice that has been directed to the Black community, that that we had to suffer when we're trying to peacefully protest and protect our lives and stand up for our lives and stand up for the nameless and all of that, or not the nameless, but those who would be forgotten if we didn't say their names. That's more what I wanted to say, because they have names, but those who could easily be like swept under the rug. Like, when we were out there protesting, we were met with 10, 15, 20 times, what those people, I had a million different names that would come into mind, but I'll just say people, what those people met when they decided to attack the Capitol. We all know that. We all know that it was just kind of like, what happened? And I know that there was some law enforcement doing what they could to protect their lives, doing what they could to protect others. But then there was just a question overall of like, why wasn't there more of a presence? And then when you stacked it side by side with like the presence at these Black Lives Matters protests, it was just like, it's just exhausting to see that. It's exhausting to have gone through the repeated cycles of what we saw in 2020. Again, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, the list goes on and on. We already have that. And then we see this very blatant display of privilege, just broadcast. And, as I said last week, it wasn't even just Black people. It was just, I think anybody with a humane bone in their body was like, this is crazy. But I noticed more of my Black students saying like, yeah, I was just tired. I found myself taking naps. I was, just exhausted, because it's so exhausting, right? So I say that to say that, how did you feel if you watched that news, if you watched that day? How did you feel when you took that in? How did you feel in the days after? Did you notice you were, overly tired, or whatever the case may be, right? So being anchored is being rooted, is being able to find your steadiness when life is just up and down, right? So before yoga really became a way of life for me, I was trying to anchor my happiness to external things, which is what so many of us as humans do. And especially in this Western world, it's very much like more, have, get, obtain, all of the shiny things have all of the things. And so if you get this bigger house, you'll be happy. You get this bigger paying job, you'll be happy. You get that man, that woman, whatever, you'll be happy, right? And certainly creature comforts do bring us peace. I have things that I'm working towards, but when I truly realize, like, these things that I'm trying to hook my happiness into, like, if they don't work out, especially if you try to hook into other people, if people go away because they have their own journeys and life paths and things like that, like, if you're constantly anchoring your inner happiness to the outside world, to the external world, I have to say, you are setting yourself up for letdown, because true happiness comes from within. It's being at peace with who you are. It's being at peace with where you are. It's being at peace with what is. And believe me, even with all this yoga, like, it took me time to really learn and apply that. But even now, at this place where I am, again, 10 years in almost with teaching, I still have to remind myself of that every day. I share often about, working on conceiving my second baby, over the age of 40, at this age of 43. And it's something that I was fighting for. And I still am, in my energetic, spiritual kind of way. But I'm also backing off from the process to just be with what is, because it was causing me a lot of stress I didn't realize. It was causing me a lot of angst I didn't realize. It was causing angst in my relationship with David, frankly, like, just to constantly have this thing that we're working towards. And if it doesn't happen this month, and we're, disappointed, we're trying again, and, all this type of stuff. And it was just, I just said, okay, I have to back up and trust the process. So even with this work I do, even as much as I teach, like, I still have to, remind myself of that, to just be at peace with what is. And again, for those of us that have like that fighting spirit, or like that feeling like you have to be doing something, I get it. It's so hard to just be sometimes, because it makes you feel like you are losing faith. It makes you feel like you're not fighting. It makes you feel like you're not doing all you can do. But sometimes just being is the most powerful thing you can do. Trusting the moment is the most powerful thing you can do. Doesn't mean to eliminate the vision. It doesn't mean to eliminate the desires of your heart. It just means, okay, how can I approach this in a different way, in a way that keeps me peaceful, in a way that keeps me in harmony, with the rest of my life. And so again, finding the tools that can help you stay grounded and anchored will help you do that from an internal perspective, so that, again, when life just shows itself, it shows its ass, frankly, the way it did, on January 6th. Or again, just managing those everyday things, like How do you experience life, but still be at peace within? Still, be able to sort of regulate yourself internally, to not go into an abyss of like, my life is shit, or things are never going to work out, or just moving to those places that sort of harden your heart, mind, spirit to faith, to possibilities, to vision, to all of that. So tools such as yoga, I'm going to say that, meditation, practices such as Tai Chi and Qigong. I can't speak to those too much. I have practiced them here and there, but those are not my wheelhouses, but they are practices and they're great practices. I know a lot of senior citizen communities use those practices because they help not just with the breathing and the mindfulness, but with the balance and gentle movement. Mindfulness, which is different from meditation. It's a very fine line, but it's different. When we sit to meditate in a traditional practice, you sit, and the idea is to try not to think of anything. It doesn't mean that the world goes away, but it's just a space of just allowing everything just to be and noticing what you notice and letting what you notice come and go. What my stepmother loves to remind me of, Terry, I love this and I use this in my classes a lot. It's like our mind is the sky and our thoughts are the clouds, right? Our mind is always steady. The sky is always there. It's the clouds that come and go, right? And some of the clouds are big clouds and some of the clouds are storm clouds and some of the clouds have like beautiful shapes, right? And our thoughts are the same way. Some of our thoughts are light. Some of our thoughts are loving. Some of our thoughts are empowering and encouraging and inspiring. And then some of our thoughts can take us to places that can be really hard to get out of. Some of our thoughts can take us to places of anger. Some of our thoughts can just, take us to places that are not to our full benefit. And meditation is a practice that allows you to notice it all, but without shifting, judging, changing. A lot of times students will say to me, man, when I sit down to meditate, it's like, that's when all of my thoughts come to me. And it's true. That happens to me all the time. When we're just moving through our everyday lives and things are just happening, like we're not really creating a space of silence for our mind, such that when we do come to that silent space, which is why a lot of people struggle with the monkey mind when they're trying to sleep, it's like the first moment where you've given your mind some silence, and then all of that stuff that you've been taking in and processing all comes to the surface, right? So meditation is a practice that helps you to manage that. How do you get to those spaces when you have your monkey mind and not get overwhelmed or not lose the sleep or not get anxious? Like, how do you notice all of that and take a breath and come right back to center? That's what meditation does. Mindfulness is more of a practice of being present with every single moment as it's happening. So for example, I am recording this podcast on Sunday, January 17th. It's 5:50 p.m. Eastern time. And this is all that's happening. It's not about being worried about what am I doing at 10 o'clock. It's not about being worried about, well, what happened at 10 o'clock this morning. It's not about being in Friday and being anxious about, what's going to happen then. It's about what's happening right now and being present with each and every moment as it happens. So mindfulness as a practice, meditation as a practice, yoga as a practice, any practice that brings you back to your center. And that can look like anything. For some folks, it's dancing with abandon, just dancing freely, moving around, just getting stuff out of your body, just, all of that. For some folks, it's taking a walk. For some folks, it's getting to the beach. I myself am dying to get to the beach. I'm a water sign. I will say I am not a swimmer. I'm actually very scared of super deep water, but I am also soothed by the water because I am a water sign. And that is like when the world does get to quote unquote normal again, like that is one of the first places I'm going, to like a beach where I could sit and put my feet and find myself. But that is how some people ground down. And so whatever it is that helps you stay anchored, whatever it is that helps you come back to center, whatever it is that allows you to feel like yourself is like a practice that you can use to stay grounded, to stay anchored, to stay rooted when you feel like everything around you is falling apart, or when you're just having a shitty day, or when you wake up and you're just on like the wrong side of bed. Like, how can I just find a place to put myself, and just kind of be with what is? What's recommended to me a lot, and I've also suggested this to David because he's an earth sign, is going out into the earth, like walking outside in your bare feet and letting your feet connect to the earth. And when you feel your feet connect to the earth, that just gives you automatically like that sense of being grounded. Connecting with the earth is grounding. And so I'm okay with like going out in the world, little hippie that I am, maybe not every street, but I'd be willing to like go out to like the little park that's near where we live and put my feet in the bare ground. David, not so much. He's a little finicky with like, I don't know, people even out there. And I know there are a lot of people that are finicky about bare feet, like touching the earth. I know that. So, okay, those people who have the finicky feet are like, well, what can I use? So there's a tool for you. I actually just found this tool yesterday. So I will say holding a crystal, like a rose quartz, a clear quartz, selenite, anything that helps you feel grounded. Amethyst, there's so many crystals and stones out there. I have known that holding on to a crystal or stone can help you to feel grounded. Shoot, even grabbing a rock from the ground and holding it with intention can help you feel grounded. But what I found yesterday is a new tool, a new crystal that I learned. Actually, it's stone. And so, like I said, yesterday, January 16th, was David's birthday, and I went out to this local market, shout out to Roots Market in Maryland, that makes a fantastic vegan carrot cake. So the cream cheese is vegan, all of it's vegan. I'm not vegan, David's more veganish. I don't like carrot cake, but this carrot cake from Roots is amazing. So I went out there to get that for David's birthday, and there's this cute little store that's in the area. So if anybody is listening to this who lived in Maryland or lives in Maryland, if you know the Roots Market in Clarksville, there's Roots, there's Great Sage, a really great vegan restaurant, and then there is the store called Nest, and they call this little area like Conscious Corner. It's the cutest little thing. And Nest has all of the things, sage and candles and crystals and, clothing and just all of the stuff for people who love all of the things like that. And so I was like, oh, well, let me just kind of browse through there and see what they have. And I was looking at their stones, and I came across this beautiful earth green. I call it earth green. It's like that pine, that really deep, beautiful green. And it's called, my apologies if I'm pronouncing this wrong, I'm going to call it an epidote, Epidote. And the energy of the stone is when you want to honor your connection to Mother Nature, when you want to feel your connection to Earth. And I was like, oh my God, this is like perfect for David because, again, he's not going to be the type of guy to, maybe go outside in the local Maryland community. He'll walk maybe barefoot on a beach, but not like in our local park, right? So I thought, oh my God, this is perfect because this is something that he can keep nearby when he feels like he needs to feel grounded, when he feels like he needs to have that connection to the earth. He can hold on to this particular stone with that particular energy and draw that rootedness feeling in. And so I say it's new because I just learned about this stone yesterday. And so look up an epidote. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I would say if you have a local metaphysical store. So there's a store here where I live in Laurel called the Crystal Fox that has everything, tarot cards, incense, Wiccan stuff. I mean, anything, Orisha, anything you can think of, like they have it. So if you know of a store like that, or the stores that sell all the, beautiful spiritual things, like if you know a local store, a local business, I would encourage you to support your local business, especially in these times. A lot of them are offering online. But you can probably also find this stuff on Amazon too. So maybe get yourself like an epidote. Get yourself another crystal or stone that speaks to you that has like that rooted, grounded, coming back to self energy. That's something that you can grab at any time to anchor yourself, to root yourself. Again, walking outside barefoot to root yourself. pausing and simply taking a deep breath, a way to root yourself. Yoga, movement of the body, is a way to get stale, toxic, old energy that's stuck in the body. Emotions, when we feel things, and we don't discharge the things that truly impact us. So certain emotional experiences, certain traumatic experiences, they get stuck in the body. The body is the container for our entire life experience. And so movement, whether gentle, dancing, active, whatever it is a way to unstick, you know what I mean? To get that energy unstuck from the body, because that goes back to what I said more towards the beginning of the podcast. That stuff gets stuck in the body, and then you end up having the headaches, the ulcers, the tight shoulders, the tight jawline, all of those different things. Like I said at the beginning, when you go to the doctor and you've done all the things, but you're still kind of struggling with that stuff, that's when I say scratch beneath the surface. And then you may find there's some stuff that you haven't dealt with. There's something going on in your life energetically or emotionally that needs some awareness, that needs some release, that needs your attention. Because as I learned, energy transmutes, but it doesn't just go away. It's just going to shift, without the intentional, I am releasing this thing. I am letting that thing go. Otherwise, it's just going to shift from your shoulders to your knees, to your ankles, from your ankles to your lower back, And so movement is a beautiful way to release tension and tightness from the body. It's a way to release the angst that you might be feeling, to release the anxiety you might be feeling. Sometimes this stuff is just bubbling up and it's like, how do I get it out? Sometimes it's just a good scream. Sometimes it's a good cry. Sometimes it's just moving till the tears come out and you are laughing, crying yourself silly. It's doing those things. And sometimes they may feel silly in the moment, but in the end, feeling that sense of relief, is priceless. Feeling that sense of being anchored is priceless. What's coming to mind also is getting to know the chakras, chakras. If you have a yoga meditation practice, you most likely have heard of the chakras or have seen chakra, what they have chakra, I want to call them flags, but they're not necessarily flags. But if you've ever gone to a yoga studio or a meditation place or even a massage place, they'll have a flag or a tapestry with the rainbow colors of red and orange and yellow and green and purple and light blue. And so the chakras are your subtle energy body, and it's what we can't touch. But when there's energetically stuff going on inside of us, we look at the chakras to see where are they too open, where are they not balanced, how can we use the energy of the chakras to sort of align ourselves. And so the base chakra of the 7 primary chakras is the root chakra, which is red. And a lot of times when I have us focus on the root chakra in a yoga or meditation practice, I'll have students either visualize the color red. I'll invite students to, if it speaks to them, to wear something red, like a scarf, to maybe season or spice their foods with red seasonings or eat red foods. So things that just keep you in that place of being rooted, of being grounded, of being anchored. As far as a physical yoga practice, mountain pose, tree pose, those are postures that help you to feel rooted and grounded. Postures that invite balance can help you find that balance in your life. So those are just some of the tools and tips that I can offer in the space of this podcast episode, which I'm going on to 44 minutes now. And with every episode, I'm going to be 30 minutes. And here I go. So within this space, those are some tips and tools that you can use to help you stay rooted and grounded, to help you regulate the emotions, to help you regulate what you may be feeling in this political climate, in this social climate, in this still pandemic climate, that we're in. If you are struggling, if you are in need of community, or if you know someone who is in need of those things, I so lovingly encourage and invite you to please find your way to my community. I offer free meditations 2 Mondays a month. I do a free guided 30-minute meditation. All you have to do is plug into Zoom, keep your camera off, keep your mic off, and just receive the practice. I'm teaching yoga classes 3 to 4 days a week, different levels, gentle, active, moderate, restorative. I am here for the world. I am here for people who need space. I am here for people who are struggling and just need something. I am here for you. So please find me on Instagram at Rachel Voss Yoga. Find me on the internet, rachelvossyoga.com. Find me on Facebook, Rachel Voss Yoga. Google Rachel Voss Yoga. Find me if you are in need, or find me if you know someone who is in need. The Rachel Voss Yoga community, as far as like the virtual yoga classes, it's a really beautiful community. We go through the practice together. We take time at the end of the practice to open up our mics and our cameras if we want, just to check in, to have that human touch. One of my newer yoga students, Judy, shout out to you, Judy, if you're listening to this. She found me through Eventbrite when I was offering a free community class on Thanksgiving Day. And Judy messaged me and said, I'm in Maine. I'm in this like small remote town. I am quarantining by myself, and it just feels terribly lonely sometimes. And this class made me feel a little less lonely while I was in it. And I was so grateful. Thank you, Judy, for sharing that with me, because that was the exact goal of that Thanksgiving class, was for the one person, somebody out there in the world that was like, I just need community. I need to see another face. I need to feel not alone for a few moments. That was the exact purpose of me holding that class. And when Judy shared that message with me, it felt like, okay, that was the goal. And so that is the goal. I mean, definitely it's to physically challenge us through the physical practice. But as I say, when I talk about yoga, it is inside out work with me. It is community with me. It is healing. It is restoration. So I invite you to come to a class, to come to a meditation. If you are experiencing financial hardship, if the person you know or somebody that you know is experiencing financial hardship, I have been so blessed that people have made donations to the Rachel Voss Yoga community that allows me to absorb the cost of offering classes at low or no cost to folks who need it, because I am so big on making yoga and meditation an accessible practice. Certainly to the Black and Brown community, but to anybody who is in need of peace, of healing, of self-love, of putting themselves back together. Because yoga was such a beautiful and is such a beautiful journey that has helped me to put myself back together. It is my honor, blessing, gift, and purpose to give back to others who may be feeling that same way. So find me, send them my way, and I will give you tools to help you stay anchored in these times and beyond. So Jill, my sister, I hope I fulfilled your suggestion well, if that makes sense. But I hope I did. I hope I made good. That's what I'm trying to say. I hope I made good of your suggestion. And thank you again for the idea, because it definitely is a necessary reminder. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pull out my book that I will be reading from today. So as you know, at the end of every podcast episode, I like to share a passage from a different inspirational book that will hopefully be a gem or just something that you can hold on to as you move on from listening to this and just continue on with your life in between. So in between the podcast episodes. So go ahead and find your comfortable seat if you're not already there. If you're in a chair, feet comfortably on the floor. If you are anywhere else, just make sure you're sitting nice and comfortably. Maybe you're lying on the floor, maybe you're sitting on the floor. And wherever you are, finding a nice tall spine. If you're laying down, let the spine release into the ground, the mat, wherever you are. Soften your shoulders, and if it speaks to you, you can close the eyes. Take a nice deep breath in. Exhale out. One more time. Deep breath in. Exhale out. Maybe even noticing what a difference those two breaths made. So this passage that I'm going to, or this book rather, that I'm going to read from today is The Book of Awakening by Mark Nepo, Having the Life You Want by Being Present to the Life You Have. This book was the first book that made its way into my life when I began the journey of finding my free, when I began the journey of walking in my purpose and walking truly authentically. This was the first book it came into my life, it was shared with me, and it just was such a powerful tool. It's another book of daily reflections, but it got me through so many moments and so many times. And I was blessed to see Miss Oprah live when she did a Live Your Best Life tour. And I went to one in 2014. I was doubly blessed to be able to buy tickets for me and my mom when she came to DC. And she did like 9 of these tours around the country, 9 different cities. And DC was one of them. And she had different special guests for each city. So one of the cities was getting like, maybe Deepak Chopra or something like that. And I was like, oh man, like I would have loved to have heard Deepak. And then a last minute addition came to DC, and it was none other than Mark Nepo. And I was like, mark my words, because I was more excited to see Mark Nepo than I was to actually see Oprah. Like, that's how powerful this book was for me. And I said, mark my words, I'm going to bring this book with me to that conference. And there was everybody and their mama there, just like me. But I was like, somehow, some way, I'm going to find Mark Nepo. And through serendipity, a yoga student who was also at the Oprah event, she saw me. She's like, oh my God, I know you wanted to find Mark Nepo. Like, he's over there. And I found him. And it was, not a super big crowd, but, big enough that I didn't want to like shove my book in his face, but I wanted to shove my book in his face. And there was some woman next to me that said, I'll give him the book for you to sign. And she gave him, was it the book? No. He signed the book. I was able to get him to sign the book. I was afraid to ask him to take a picture. That's what it was. I got him to sign the book. And then this woman standing next to me was like, she didn't say, I'll get him to sign the book. She said, I'll take the picture for you. And she used her phone. And she said, I'm going to text you the picture. What's your number? I gave her my number. And I was like, this woman's going to walk off and like never text me this picture. And sure enough, within like 10 minutes, she's like, here you go. And it was a picture of me and Mark Nepo after he signed my book. And it says, for Rachel, with many blessings, Mark. So the Book of Awakening, super powerful book. I definitely recommend it for your anchoring toolkit, if you would. And so this passage that I chose to read is called Outweighing Clouds. Some days I wake with a cloud around my heart, and it dulls everything except the weight I carry deep inside. Yet, just because I can't make it to the light today doesn't mean that the light has vanished. In truth, the heart, like the earth, is continually blanketed by ever-changing atmospheres that come and go between who we are and how we live our days. So faith, it seems, can be defined as the effort to believe in light when we're covered by clouds. And though it feels like the sun will never come again, the truth is it has never stopped burning its light. In fact, its heat and warmth is burning steadily, right now, on the far side of whatever cloud we are under. If we could only suspend our judgment when clouded in the heart, for many skepticisms are born from conclusions drawn while unable to see, as if any kind of understanding will prevent the clouds from coming or going again and again. But no cloud lasts forever. The earth and all that grows from it knows this well. So does the heart and everything that grows from it, in spite of all our very understandable pains. So I really wanted to find a passage that spoke to the idea of staying anchored. And I looked through all my books, and then I found that, and I was like, this is it. And so even though the words don't specifically say stay anchored, but outweighing the clouds, right? So the cloud of, if it's this political cloud, if it's the social justice cloud, if it's a personal cloud, if it's just, I woke up in a funky cloud today, right? How do I not stay in this place? How do I not get weighted down by the clouds? You anchor yourself, you root yourself, you ground yourself, and you outweigh or you wait out the clouds, knowing that the sun isn't gone. It's going to shine again. It may not be right there right now. It may not be visible to you right now, but it's there and it will shine again. And so keeping yourself rooted and anchored during those cloudy times. And 2020, as I said, was an example of why we do these practices on a larger level, but applying these practices in your everyday lives will help you, I promise, to find a little more peace of mind, a little more peace of spirit, just a little more peace in your everyday lives. So stay anchored, my friends. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close out this episode by saying, as always, may you be happy, may you be free, may you be peaceful, easeful, useful, and joyful. The light in me honors the light in each of you. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you next week.